We are on the record for hearings in the matters listed in the North Dakota Industrial Commission hearing docket for February 16th, 2022. I'm Stephen Nelson, hearing examiner for these hearings. We are at the hearing room for the Department of Mineral Resources, Oil and Gas Division, and it is 9 a.m. On the docket, the following matters will be continued or dismissed. Case number 29046 will be continued to March. Case number 29119 will be continued to March. Case number 29120 will be continued to March. And case number 29121 will be continued to March. The administrative docket starts on page 4 with case number 29193 and it goes through case number 29212. These cases will be heard in the next room with Michael Zisch. Audio recordings of the cases on the administrative docket will be placed on the oil and gas website by the end of the week. If you wish to appear in one of the matters on the administrative docket, please appear in the next room. If there is opposition to the matter, it will be brought back into this hearing room to be heard and your statements and evidence will be taken. We will begin with case number 29187, which is an application of Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation for an order allowing the Ryder Olson 31-1H well, file number 38541, with a portion of the heel of the lateral not isolated by cement and located closer than 150 feet to the northern boundary of the spacing unit, consisting of sections 1 and 12, Township 155 North, Range 97 West, Williams County, ND, to be abandoned in a manner consistent with the applicable field rules, permit conditions, or other well location restrictions, or granting such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation. And Mr. Examiner, I've got a mix of witnesses who will be appearing telephonically as well as live. And then I've also got a number of Whiting representatives here who are present but may not testify. And if I could just introduce everybody in the room first.
Sure.
Mr. Chip Reimer at the table is the Executive Vice President of Operations and the Chief Operating Officer for Whiting. I don't intend to call Mr. Reimer as a witness, but I would request that he have the opportunity up front to offer some comments or opening statements with respect to the case on from Whiting's perspective, and then potentially the opportunity to make some closing statements as well.
Sure, that is all right.
Okay. And then also present in the room is Charles Olson, the Vice President of Operations with Whiting, and Jimmy Kopp, the Drilling and Completions Manager, present. And then also at the table is David Skadden, the Lead Drilling Engineer and Superintendent, and David will be testifying in this case. And then on the phone for witnesses, I have Lauren Rosewald, landman. She will be testifying. Charlie Harmon on geology, and Melissa Perry with respect to reservoir engineering issues. And I guess with that, Mr. Nelson, I would request that Mr. Reimer be given the opportunity to offer some opening comments.
Very well. I will go ahead and swear you in. Mr. Reimer, could you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, sir.
I guess, Chip, before we get into your comments, just for the record, if I could have you state your name, your position with Whiting, and your business address.
Yes, sir. It's Charles John Reimer is my official name. I go by Chip. I am Executive Vice President and Chief Operating Officer for Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation. Our address is 1700 Lincoln Street, Suite 4, 4700, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
Thank you. And Mr. Nelson, I mean, I think Mr. Reimer would obviously qualify as an expert in a number of areas, but his purpose is to offer some general comments on behalf of Whiting, not really much technical testimony, so I don't think we need to swear him in as an expert.
Sure, that makes sense.
Cool. Thank you very much, and I appreciate your time this morning. Also want to thank the NDIC for the opportunity to give us a little more time to try to enter this well. They gave us a 90-day suspension back in January for us and for David and our team to put a better plan together to try to re-enter this well and plug it properly. So thank you so much for that time. As Wade indicated, we'll be showing some land into where the well's located in respective to other operators and other wells, so you can see that here in a little while. We'll also be working through David's plan. He spent numerous hours and days trying to put as many options. We've checked with different organizations, different parts of the country, different fields to try to have the best opportunity to re-enter this well, so thank you. As I look going through this thing, I think there's probably 3 options or 3 things that will occur when it's all said and done. First of all, we get through and we basically get down to the bottom and plug it like we want to and plug it like the North Dakota rules tell us we should plug the well and get it done completely, which is what we hope we're planning on doing. There's another option potentially that we potentially get partial way down and don't get it completely plugged, and so there'll be some type of potential exclusion area. So that's why we want to show you what we believe the subsurface looks like, and we'll have our subsurface team go through that to give you a presentation on that and what those areas might be impacted. Then there's the other option where we're unable to get into the old well bore, and so we'll see what that entails when it's all said and done. Today we have a rig identified, and we're hoping to get permission to re-enter this well under this plan that you will see today, and seek to go to through that process, and then at some point look for additional approvals. We do have a pad that we're permitting right now that's about 800 feet to the southwest of there for 3 additional wells, assuming we can get this well permitted. So that's what we'll be seeking today, and I appreciate your time and thoughts on this, but thank you very much.
And Mr. Nelson, Lauren Rosewald will be the first technical witness, land witness.
Okay.
She's on the phone.
Ms. Rosewall, can you hear me?
Lauren, are you there?
Yes, can y'all hear me?
Yes, yes. Okay. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Lauren, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, and in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Of course. My name is Lauren Rosewall. I am a landman, Williston supervisor. I'm employed by Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation, and our business address is 1700 Lincoln Street, Suite 4700, Denver, Colorado, zip code 80203.
And Lauren, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes,
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
I have.
Okay. And you're familiar with the land issues surrounding the Ryder Olson well, is that correct?
I am.
Okay. I'd move the testimony of Ms. Rosewald be received as that of an expert in this case.
It will be accepted as that of an expert.
And Lauren, let's go ahead and move into your exhibits then. If you can start with L1 and identify that exhibit for us.
Yes. So on Exhibit L1, we have the Locator Map. This is depicting the Dollar Joe Field in Williams County, North Dakota. As you can see, the Dollar Joe Field is outlined in red.
Okay. And then let's move on to L2. If you can identify, I guess, the spacing unit for the Ryder Olson well and the adjoining unit where we provided notice.
Sure. On Exhibit L2, we have the land plat and offsetting operators. The Ryder Olson 31-1H spacing unit is consistent of sections 1 and 12, Township 155 North, Range 97 West. Here we show Whiting leasehold marked in yellow. In sections 1 and 12, Whiting has a BPO, or before payout working interest, of 89%. We also show our offsetting operators as depicted on the map. We also provided notice to all parties in Township 155 or 156 North, Range 97 West, sections 25 and 36, operated by Hess.
Okay. And that's all the questions that I have for Ms. Rosewald, and I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Lauren, this is Bruce Hicks. When you indicated that you notified all or noticed all parties, who are you talking about? Is it the working interest owners or working interest owners and unleased mineral interest owners, or who was it?
That's correct, and I should have been more provided more clarity. It was all working interest owners, Whiting lessors, and then also unleased mineral interest owners.
Okay, and does Whiting have any interest in that spacing unit?
We do. We have an 18% working interest.
Okay, and then the mineral interest owners that you have leased there, you notified those also?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no further questions, we will move on to your next. Do you want to go to Charlie Harmon next?
No, if I could, Mr. Hearing Examiner, I will go to David Scadden next.
David Scadden's in the room. Mr. Can you please raise your right hand? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
David, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Yes, David Scadden, Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation. I'm the lead drilling engineer and superintendent, and our business address is 1700 Lincoln Street, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
And David, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
I have.
And David, you were involved with and are familiar with the drilling of the Ryder Olson 31-1H well, is that correct?
That's correct.
And have you put together some exhibits you intend to testify to today?
Yes, sir.
Okay. I'd move the testimony of Mr. Scadden be received as that of an expert in this case.
It will be received as that of an expert.
Okay. And Mr. Hearing Examiner, I apologize, I just realized, but the first exhibit that I'm going to have Mr. Scadden testify to is a 3-page exhibit. There's not a label on it, but I'll refer to that as Exhibit 01 and identify that as 01. And it's the 3 pages of slides.
Mark those as 01.
Yeah, and then the exhibit immediately following that 1 page, that will be 02.
Following page will be admitted as 02. So you have those first 3 pages as 01.
Correct.
And then that 1 page is 02.
So David, looking at what we've just identified as 01, the first page on there, can you just initially take us through the drilling issues with respect to that entire pad? Kind of walk us through what happened?
Yeah, so the first page here is an overview of the pad, as well as general statements on what happened on the Mariah Olson 31-1H and the Ryder Olson 31-1H. All the wells on this pad, there's 5 of them, had surface casing batch set down to around 1,800 feet. We drilled them, as you're looking at the plat here, we drilled the surfaces in order: Richard, Ryder, Mariah, Marilys, and Scott Olson. At that point, we started drilling the wells to completion, working our way back across the pad. So we drilled the Marilys and the Scott Olson 31-1H wells successfully to completion, at which point we skidded over to the 3rd well, the Mariah Olson 31-1H. Shortly after drilling out of the surface shoe at 2,204 feet, we started having issues caused by a catastrophic equipment failure with the rig. That equipment failure led to a pack-off and stuck pipe event, and while trying to free the drill string, we began experiencing severe losses and breaking down of that Pierre shale that we were in. Once we were free and I decided that the wellbore was unsafe to be in, the decision was made and communicated to the NDIC that we intended to P&A this well. So we started operations on setting a cement plug at the surface casing shoe, and later on, prior to releasing off the pad, set a 60-foot surface plug to secure that wellbore. And that surface shoe plug was pressure tested to 1,000 psi for 15 minutes per the state's request. At that point, we skidded over to the Ryder Olson to drill that intermediate section. Caution was taken while drilling that because we were unsure of how the offset issues would affect us. We had little to zero issues while drilling it, and that's when the decision was made to proceed with drilling the well as planned. We had drilled all the way to landing point, our intermediate casing point of 10,787 feet, at which point we came out of the hole to run 7-inch. Shortly after picking up 7-inch, tripping in the hole just outside of the shoe, and it's called out on the next slide. I can get to that.
Yeah, let's go on to the next page of that exhibit, and if you can kind of walk us through the specifics of the Ryder Olson well, the well at issue. So.
Yes, sir. So while running 7-inch, we hit a bridge at 1,972 feet. Attempted to work pipe unsuccessfully. At that point, made the decision to come out and pick up a clean out assembly to begin trying to get past whatever obstruction we had. Taking a step back, I've highlighted this first bullet point here. I mentioned that we got to landing point, our intermediate casing point, as planned. There was 94 feet of exposed middle Bakken formation there. The wellbore entered the Bakken pool 56.14 feet from the north line, which was 93.86 feet from our 150-foot setback as called out at the beginning of this hearing. So we began a series of reentry attempts over the coming weeks. That process started on Christmas Day, December 25th, and we proceeded for multiple weeks attempting to reenter the well, multiple BHAs designs, multiple fluid designs. We pumped different types of wellbore stability products. Eventually, through this process for the location exemption, we were granted permission by the NDIC on January 6th to temporarily leave the location, at which point we set a cement plug from 2,023 feet, which was our maximum depth we were able to achieve, up to 1,319 feet up inside surface casing, and we pressure tested that as well, 1,000 psi for 15 minutes, good pressure test, and we secured the well there. Any questions, I guess, at that point before I proceed with kind of the next portion?
We'll
Okay.
kind of go through all of the exhibits, and then at the end, they'll have an opportunity to kind of ask those. So that kind of got us to what happened, and if you want to move then to the next page on that exhibit and kind of walk us through the plan for addressing the issue going forward.
Yeah, so our plan going forward is multi-pronged. The general idea here is that we are going to move a rig back on there at the beginning of March and begin trying to re-enter the Ryder. Those options, again, multifaceted here, include straight re-entry from the Ryder well, an attempted intercept well drilled from the Ryder well, and then potential intercept well drilled from the Richard well, which, if you'll recall, was the last well on the pad that we had surface set on, but nothing further. And ultimately, the last diagram here depicts what our goal is with securing this well. There's the series of plugs that have been listed here that the state representatives that we've spoken to lined out as what we need to plug, and we agree here. Those include the bottom of the curve located in the Bakken, the top of the original kickoff point, the top of the Ratcliffe, the top of the Amsden, the top of the Mowry, a surface casing shoe, and then our 60-foot P&A surface plug. So our plan, once able to re-enter the well through the series of things that we're going to attempt, we will begin pumping these cement plugs at the specified intervals. The last bullet point I have here is that we were guided to have 250-foot plugs at a minimum set through each one of these formations due to the severity of the wellbore stability problems and the uncertainty of if we are able to enter, keeping any amount of stability that we've gained through this process. I'm proposing to pump 500-foot cement plugs across all of these zones and not tag them as we would normally in these situations, and just pump them on our way out of the hole, isolating each one of these zones as we go.
Okay. And then let's move on. We've identified it as O2, and I think you've kind of testified already to a lot of what's on this, but can you just walk us through this exhibit and summarize what you've got shown here?
Yes, sir. I want to include this here. You'll see this is a directional plots of the Ryder-Olson. If you reference the larger bird's eye view of the well, you'll see a blue line in the slot where the Ryder-Olson was planned to be. That was our planned directional plan for this. And then the red line on all of the graphs is our actual surveys. So again, you can see where we built off section, our back build to the northwest here, and then started our curve coming into section 1. You can see I've called out here at what depth we entered the Bakken pool, which was 10,496.77 feet measured depth at the specified 10,063 TVD, which is our logged and interpreted top of the Bakken pool, which was about 57 feet from the north line. It also shows you our actual projection to bit bottom hole of 10,787 feet.
And Mr. Examiner, I don't have any questions for Mr. Scadden. I would offer these operational exhibits, what we've identified as 01 and 02.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
David, you indicated on page 3 of your exhibit 01 that you wanted the minimum 500-foot plug set and not tag them. Why wouldn't you want to tag those plugs?
So my concern is that, say we are able to get back into the well and intercept it as planned, my concern is that stability that we have in our ability to go deeper, further into the well, that does not remain, and that we have another collapse issue and potentially lose absolute access to the well. So my proposal is that once we're in there, we start pumping cement plugs on the way out of the hole and do not re-enter the well due to its instability.
There have been occasions where wells have been drilled into the Bakken, and of course it's overpressured, there's a lot of gas, that we get gas cut cement. How can you prevent that from happening?
Good question. So, we will, first of all, before we start pumping cement, we will make sure the well is dead. When we went to run 7-inch, the well was dead. We had nice overbalancing of the drilling fluid on formation, and we saw no gas while we were drilling the curve. Beyond that, we can just be sure that we are pumping high-quality cement jobs with high-quality spacers and following quality plug procedures when we pump those so that we do not create any sort of ratty cement.
Is the current TD in the Middle Bakken, or is it
Yes,
Three
sir.
Forks, Middle Bakken? And it's my understanding that in the interim here from when we visited about this, this issue and the hearing today is that you were contacting other operators that had similar issues. Had anybody talked about possibly using a resin or some other type of cement or something that you could pump into the base of that, below your shoe or below your surface casing and actually seal that zone over to your well? You do have an offset well, of course.
So you're saying enter one of our wellbores that we have on location.
And maybe drill a little deeper, and then in that problem zone, try to pump some substance that would adhere to it and consolidate it so you could possibly drill through it and not have that collapse issue.
Yeah, so I considered this myself because, like you mentioned, we have a couple wells on location that we still have some amount of access to. I feel as though potentially what we saw with this last plug that we pumped, that we did see a little bit of containing the fallout zone or washout zone, where I believe part of the problem is coming from. I feel as though that that is limited help, because I do feel like the fill that we have inside of our original hole is still going to be the mush that we've been trying to clean out for those 2 weeks that we were on there. It's definitely something that we can consider again. I'm concerned that we will do it and see no additional benefit when we could have run pipe or something else at that point.
So is it your intention to re-enter the Richard Olson and try to intercept the rider?
So the very first thing that we'll do is we'll get back on the rider and we will drill up these cement plugs that we've left there since early January and reevaluate what the hole conditions are at that point. Because to your point, there's potential that these last 15.8 pound plugs that we pumped did something to consolidate and solidify some of our trouble. So we'll go in, evaluate hole conditions, see if we're able to just re-enter the way that we were working on it before, cleaning up the hole one bit at a time. And then the string of options begins after that. Depending on what depths we're able to get to and what the hole stability is at those depths, I would like to run another string of pipe. At this point, 8 5/8 down to whatever depth we're able to get to, let's call it 2,000 feet, to then seal off and give us a proper wellbore to work with, as opposed to the large void above us that we definitely have from the washout. So that would be the first couple options, and then if re-entry from the rider is deemed to be a dead end or becoming more dangerous than it was before, at that point, yes, my plan is to enter on the Richard. We will set an 8 5/8 casing string down to around 2,500 feet, which is what we perceive to be past the trouble zone. And so we'll get that behind casing on the Richard and then begin our intercepting attempts from the Richard wellbore.
Okay, thank you.
David, when you attempt to re-enter the Ryder Olson, will you be going in with directional tools also?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Sir.
That will also be part of how I verify that we are in the old well.
Any further questions from commission staff? So we can move on to your next witness. Is it Charlie Harmon then next, or?
Yeah, that's correct. It'll be Charlie Harmon.
Okay. And Charlie Harmon, can you hear me?
I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Charlie, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Yeah, my name's Charlie Harmon. I'm employed as a geologist by Whiting Petroleum Corporation. Our address is 1700 Lincoln, Suite 4700, Denver, Colorado, 80203.
And Charlie, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes, I have.
And Charlie, are you familiar with the geology underlying the Ryder Olson spacing unit?
Yes, I am.
And are you also familiar with the geology surrounding that spacing unit?
Yes.
Okay. And you've prepared some geology-related exhibits that you intend to testify to today, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Harmon be received as that of an expert in this case.
It will be received as that of an expert.
And then, Charlie, let's go ahead and start with Exhibit G1. If you can just kind of walk us through these exhibits with respect to, what things might look like going forward potentially.
Yeah. Exhibit G1 is a standard structure map on the top of the Upper Bakken Shale with a 20-foot contour interval over the Dollar Joe Field area. And I'm calling out where the Ryder Olson 31-1H well is in that DSU in 1 and 12, as well as in the red diamond type log that we'll reference. And then 2 wells to the northeast. These are their lease name is Perriott, that Whiting completed in 2018, and we'll use those as a completions reference in further exhibits.
All right. Let's go ahead and move on to the type log then, G2.
Yeah, this is a type log of the Bakken Petroleum system in the Olson 1431 TFH well, about a mile to the northeast of the Ryder Olson. In the left log track, you can see gamma ray. In the center log track, deep resistivity. And then the right log track, bulk density and neutron porosity, with the formations labeled to the right of the Lodgepole, Upper Bakken Shale, Middle Bakken, Lower Bakken Shale, first bench of the Three Forks, and then the lower benches of the Three Forks. And for reference, this well also has some advanced logs that we'll refer to for our fracture orientation in future exhibits.
Then let's move on to G3. If you can take us through, I guess, potential remediation or potential development post-remediation.
Yeah, so I wanted to start with showing a map of the scenario if we're able to kind of fully remediate and P&A the Ryder Olson 311H. So on this map, we're zoomed in on just the DSU in sections 1 and 12, and I'm calling out the survey that you can see on the 311H, the Ryder, and then in a green box near the bottom hole, I'm highlighting the 290 feet of that wellbore that's currently exposed to the Bakken pool. So that would be above the Upper Bakken Shale through its landing point in the Middle Bakken. And our current intention is to first and foremost P&A that well, in which case we intend to drill 3 new wells from a new pad to fully develop the DSU.
Okay. And let's go ahead then and move on to G4. Why don't you walk us through that exhibit?
Yeah, so G4 is outlining the data that we have in hand today on reservoir information in the event that we're not able to P&A the Ryder Olson well. So that would mean that we have an open wellbore and we'd be looking for the location exemption. And we've made some considerations on how we might want to isolate or avoid that well with respect to nearby hydraulic fracturing in the Bakken pool to ensure that there's, the oil and gas in the Bakken pool stays there. And so we've got a variety of data types from the offsetting area. The first is the fracture orientation. In that type log, we have the dipole sonic log that shows us that when fracks are pumped in the area, they generally grow in the northeast-southwest direction with an azimuth of north 44 east. Based on offsetting geomechanical completions modeling, we see that during the frac job, we see a half length, or the direction and length of the fracture one way from the wellbore is up to about 1,450 feet parallel to that northeast-southwest direction. Then when you look at a production model, the actual contributing fracture length is smaller than that at about 150 to 500 feet. And so what we're offering for consideration should we not be able to fully remediate the Ryder is a buffer area shown in the lower left diagram in red that's rectangular that provides additional distance beyond our expected induced fracture length and parallel to that fracture growth direction. So what we're effectively saying is that we would draw a shape around the exposed wellbore in the Ryder Olson that adheres to this half-mile northeast-southwest buffer and a quarter-mile perpendicular buffer that we would not pump any fracs within in the Bakken or Three Forks.
Okay. And if you can elaborate on that a little bit with G5.
Yeah, and so the following slides are going to provide context and some support of kind of data we have in hand that justifies those dimensions. This G5 is showing what that shape would look like if we were not able to fully remediate the Ryder-Olson, where we've got that same green box that's exposed to the Bakken pool and the Ryder-Olson. And then I've shown the footages of a half mile each way in the northeast and southwest directions, and then a quarter mile in the northwest-southeast directions. And that is kind of the concept that we're proposing for a frac buffer around that exposed wellbore to prevent out-of-zone communication of gas and oil. The reference well that is providing us with the fracture orientation is shown about a mile to the east. And then just for reference, I've got in gray dash a half mile radius around the bottom hole of the Ryder-Olson.
Okay. And Charlie, you've evaluated some data from other wells in coming up with this plan, correct?
Yeah, and so the following slides are just going to provide some context on how we came up with these numbers. And this first figure is zoomed out. You can see the Ryder-Olson in the southwest corner of the map. And we're looking at a pad that we completed in 2018 to the northeast, which includes the Periot 3420 TFH and the Periot 4420 HU wells. And so we applied the same criteria to those two wells and consequently drew this red shape around them with the intention to say that based on the footages and the orientation that we're using, we would expect to see fracture hits from those Periot wells inside that area. And I've colored the bottom holes of offsetting wells that Whiting operates just for context. And so that the wells that were completed have the green dots. And then wells that saw fracture activity, whether in pressure or production, have red dots. And then offsetting wells that saw no fracture activity have blue. And so the following slides will show the actual production and pressure data from the Sheldon 3420H, which was between the two completed wells. It clearly sees a frac hit. The Tank 3118H to the west, outside the buffer, which does not see a frac hit. And then the Violet Olson 4129H, which is partially inside that area, which sees a very minor hit.
Okay. Mr. Examiner, I don't have any further questions for Mr. Harmon at this time, and I'd like to offer G1 through G6. I will want to recall Mr. Harmon after we have the next witness, Melissa Perry, testify on a few exhibits, then bring Mr. Harmon back. But for now, I'll offer these, and to the extent there's questions on these.
Okay, sounds good. The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Charlie, your exhibit G2, the Olson 1431 TFH, that's where that frac model was, that's what that frac model is based on?
That frac model is not explicitly from that Olson well, but it's from an operated Whiting well nearby. And you can see that the length shown in the underneath the actual image on the bottom right are generally less than the numbers we're proposing for kind of a high side. And then our buffer is then 1,000 feet even further than what we're seeing as kind of the high side frac length. But no, that isn't directly referencing the Olson well.
So the Olson well is where you got the frac orientation from?
Yeah, and that's coming from open hole logs in the vertical pilot.
And your frac model on G4, what well did that come from?
That came from a Wold well about, I can get you that exact information. It's a existing frac model we had in hand from approximately 3 years ago, but if you'd like further information on that, I'm sure we could file additional context for that.
Yeah, I would just like to know which, if you could identify which well it was.
I think that's something we can follow up on.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie, that well that you're talking about, the Wold, is that also completed in the Middle Bakken?
Yeah, we did this frac model project on a pad that had Middle Bakken and Three Forks completions on it, and through that effort, I believe these numbers that we're assuming would be representative of a completion in either zone, as far as our induced and propped half lengths. And so what you're seeing here, I believe, is the Middle Bakken well, but I think we'd see very similar numbers for a Three Forks well.
And then on your exhibit G6, some of the laterals are different colors. Are these some in the Middle Bakken, some in the Three Forks first bench?
Yes, that's correct. The orange existing wellbores are Three Forks laterals, and the green ones are Middle Bakken. And we commonly see frac communication between those two zones in the area.
And these wells, where you're indicating frac hits, were those wells, were any of them batch drilled with the others, or were they later offset?
So the recent completions with the green dots, the two Periots, were drilled after the Sheldon tank and Violet Olson. So the Sheldon tank and Violet Olson were pre-existing wells, and the frac hits that they observed were based on the completions in the newer Periot wells.
Okay, so you've actually had pressure sinks created prior to fracking those child wells, right?
To a certain extent, yes.
So do you still think you would see the extent of the frac hits on your particular location that should have virgin pressure on all the wells?
Our intention right now is to kind of share the data that we have available to us on the extent of communication when we pump a frac in the Bakken Three Forks pool. Just to, I guess, introduce the idea of how we want to kind of safely protect that rider well should remediation prove difficult. And so I think I agree that pressure should be virgin on the rider right now, so it wouldn't necessarily pull a frac towards it. With that in consideration, we wanted to share the data that we have available on what kind of protection as far as distance we see in the area in order to not see the effect of a frac hit should we, when we would like to drill adjacent to this rider well in the future.
On your exhibit G5, you're showing your area that you believe that you should stay out of as far as stages go. And of course, it's considerably up into Hess's spacing unit in the south half of 36. Have you contacted them and shared this information with them?
Given that we don't know how remediation is going to go on the rider yet, we've not shared this data with them yet. But certainly once we know kind of the fate of remediation, we'll get with them and make sure that we have a cohesive story with offsetting operators to minimize waste while also kind of protecting any remaining exposed Bakken pool.
Of course, the propped fracture is going to be less than the frac hit where you're showing how far you fracked out. Do you believe that, I mean, the 2640 seems quite a distance to restrict and require no stages. Just by creating a frac hit, are you necessarily causing inequity to those other parties, or should we be concentrating on the propped fracture half length?
I think that's something we can refine once we know more about the fate of the rider. I think our goal here is to communicate the caution that that we're considering for this location, and our appreciation of the safety that we want to communicate. We'd certainly be open to changing this shape. We just wanted to show our hand as far as the data we have available in the area and how we might consider drawing a shape around it. I certainly think that the orientation is one that we would think most relevant, as that's how we expect directionally fracs to grow. But distance is something that we'd be very open-minded to optimize.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie, I guess I have one other question for clarification. In your rectangle you drew for a frac buffer, it's your recommendation that fractures not be allowed at all in that area at this point?
I think first and foremost, our hope is that we P&A the rider and we don't have to draw any frac buffer. Just to make that abundantly clear. But should we not be able to do that, we just wanted to show our hand that this is a cautious way to think about it, and that we would probably return to the commission to propose a final one after discussion, certainly internally and with offsetting operators. But yes, I think ultimately, if that well cannot be P&A'd by a standard that the NDIC sets, then we would seek an exemption location and with an appropriate frac buffer around it with minimal or reduced completions within that.
In the very southwest of section 36, if a well were drilled there, say 550 feet from the space unit boundary, are you suggesting that that fracture from that well might intercept this Ryder Olson well?
I think that the box we've drawn represents a pretty considerable safety factor that would ensure that it would not hit. I think you could, the likelihood that you could go to the setback of the southwest corner of 36 and see no frac hit is relatively high. but we've represented this shape with a kind of conservative safety buffer just to communicate the seriousness that we take this situation.
Okay, thank you.
Charlie, on your G6, when you were discussing the frac hits on those two parent wells, are you able to identify whether or not the frac hit occurred while fracking either of the two Perriot wells, or is it just that it happened during the stimulation operations on the two of them?
Yeah, the following exhibits will provide a lot more context on that, but yeah, we have it. We'll show daily data during the Perriot frac hits that kind of demonstrate the degree of communication.
So was it, I guess, before we get into the rest of the exhibits, but did both of the Perriot wells communicate to the parent wells at different times?
I believe they were zipper fracked, so they were fracked simultaneously, and I don't believe we could, with the data available, explicitly tell if it was one or the other.
Okay.
But it was yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we will move on to your next witness, I believe Ms. Melissa Perry.
Correct.
Melissa, can you hear me?
I can.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Melissa, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Sure. It's Melissa Perry. I'm employed by Whiting Petroleum. I'm a reservoir engineer. Our address is 1700 Lincoln Street, Suite 4700, Denver, Colorado 80203.
And Melissa, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
I have.
Okay. And you've put together some engineering exhibits for the hearing today?
Yes.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Ms. Perry be received as that of an expert in this case.
It will be received as that of an expert.
And Melissa, let's start with E1. Can you kind of take us through that and sort of elaborate on what Charlie has already testified to?
Sure. So the next few exhibits are sort of a proof of concept of the boundary that Charlie has outlined. And it's a further look on the Perriot completion and the offsetting communication responses in the parent wells. So the first exhibit, E1, is, you can see in the upper left, the Perriot boundary and highlighting the Sheldon bracket. So the production plot at the top shows oil in green, gas in red, and water in blue. And then there's also a total fluid curve in yellowish orange color. And we've highlighted the start of the Perriot completion and their first production date. So you can see we shut in the Sheldon well, and during that time that the Perriots were being completed, we saw a large production response in the Sheldon in all three phases. We also saw, looking down at the table on the bottom portion of the slide, we can see in yellow a large jump also in the casing pressure of this well. So both pressure and production indicate we saw communication and a frac response in the Sheldon well, as we would expect, seeing that it's within the boundary drawn.
Okay. Let's move on to the tank well then. E2.
Okay, so E2 is the same thing, but looking at the tank, which is outside of the boundary and did not see a frac impact. Looking at the production data, you can see that we did not shut this well in during the period frac, and all of the production phases appear to be flowing in trend with their previous rate. So both the production and looking at the casing and tubing pressure data, it appears that there was no communication or response in the tank well, and it is outside the boundary. So that confirms our boundary doesn't need to be wider, certainly doesn't need to be wider than we've drawn.
Sure. Let's go ahead and move on to the next exhibit, E3, and down to the Violet Olson well.
Okay, the last well is shown there to the south, and you can see that a portion of the toe of the lateral is within the no-frac boundary. This well was also produced in its entirety during the periodic completion, but you can argue that there's maybe a little blip in the production during that time. Could be within the noise of daily data, but could be some sort of communication seen. As well as looking at the casing pressure below, you can see one day it's 80, one day it jumps up to 100 psi. So with this, we feel that though the response was negligible, we would have captured that in our boundary drawn as a no completion zone.
Okay. I have no further questions for Ms. Perry, and I'd offer exhibits E1 through E3.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, you wanted to move back to Charlie, was it?
Yeah, Mr. Examiner, if I could recall Charlie Harmon to address a couple more exhibits.
Sure, and Charlie still under oath and still admitted as an expert, so.
So, Charlie, let's go ahead and move on to what we've got marked as G7, if you can walk us through what you've got shown on that exhibit.
Yeah, so G7 is an expanded map of the area where I'm calling out the Ryder Olson 311H, as well as to the northeast, the two Perriott Whiting operated wells that we looked at over the prior slides. And with the same bottom hole wellbore coloring scheme of recent completions in green, visible frac hit with red, and no visible frac hit in blue, I'm just including a wider net of data, including some offset operators to the west. And this is really just to serve to validate the concept here, that while we don't operate all of these pads, so we don't have the casing pressure data and the daily data, just looking at production before and after new wells came on, we're seeing verification of the dimensions that we're suggesting in the contingent situation where the rider cannot be fully remediated. So this is just supporting evidence for what we've already shown with our operated data.
Okay. And then let's move on to G8, kind of address potential development, again with the caveat that it is dependent upon, I guess, your success with the remediation efforts. But why don't you take us through G8?
Yeah, so G8 is my last exhibit, and it's showing that frac buffer again with in dashed green lines the wells we would like to drill in the DSU. And this is really just meant to illustrate the degree of wellbore footage that would be lost within this DSU with the kind of suggested contingent frac buffer. Again, as we've previously discussed, we'd be open to reducing that, but either way, when we do finalize this shape, if we need to, it will have a consequence to wellbore length or completed wellbore length. And this is just an illustration of that.
Okay. And I don't have any further questions. I'd offer G7 and G8.
The exhibits, the exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Charlie, this may be a question for you or for David here, but you testified on G3 and again in G8 that the intent is to eventually put 3 additional wells in the spacing unit. And those, I think, were indicated that they'd be drilled from a totally separate pad than the current, correct?
Correct.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. So what are the plans for the Richard Olson 31-1H? I know there's potential to go into that well to intercept the rider here, but if that isn't necessary, what are the plans for the Richard?
The plan for the Richard, if we are unsuccessful intercepting it, say we use it to be intercepted, is to cement and secure it as we would a P&A.
Okay, so if you need it to intercept the rider, you'll use it to intercept the rider and then plug and abandon it?
Yes, and if we don't need it to intercept it, I'm going to plug and abandon it.
Okay, so that well gets plugged and abandoned either way.
Yes, I'm too concerned with this surface location to proceed with any other wells.
Okay, thank you.
So Wade, logistically, I don't know that it's timely to write an order for this buffer since we don't know what the results of the intervention are gonna be. Would we leave the record open for more information? Would we continue it to a future hearing date, or what are your thoughts?
I mean, yeah, I sort of view it as a two-phase approach. One, the initial efforts to get it isolated, and, kind of the second phase is going to be dependent upon, the level of success in doing that. If we achieve full success, none of this that we testified to potentially may be necessary.
The case could probably be dismissed at that point.
Right. So, I mean, I guess we're open to however the commission wants to do it. I mean, if we can just leave the record open, and come back in once sort of the results of the initial efforts, once we have that information and data available, then we can kind of proceed and see what level, if anything, is necessary with respect to, everything that Charlie and Melissa Perry have testified to.
Because one of the unknowns right now is what Hess's reaction might be to this.
True. I mean, obviously, if the full level of success isn't achieved, then, there's going to need to be notice to and input from, offset operators.
So would it be appropriate to continue this to a hearing date after the intervention attempt?
I think so.
And that's going to be again in March?
David, what's the timing on the?
Right now, it's looking like the first week of March is when I'll receive the rig.
And that might take you a week or a month, or?
The intervention, or to the intercept process,
Yeah.
I would say right now it's open-ended at this point. I'm projecting out 2 to 4 weeks.
So maybe appropriate for Whiting or Wade to let us know, and the hearing examiner can continue it at that point.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, thank you.
David, can you tell us what rig that you've acquired?
Yes, H&P 535. We'll be receiving it from Marathon as soon as they finish up on this pad.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? All right, and so I believe there was discussion, we will be keeping the record open indefinitely, or is? that-
Yeah, at this point, I mean, we don't have I guess, a date certain when we'll know the information, but
So the record will remain open indefinitely to be continued to a later date once we have more.
And Mr. Nelson, I don't have any further witnesses or any information, but Mr. Reimer, did you want an opportunity to offer any closing comments?
Yeah, Wade, if that's okay with.
Is that okay, Mr. Examiner?
Sure, and still under oath for any.
Yes, thank you. So I just want to thank your time, your questions, and your consideration as we try to repair this well. I know our team has spent a lot of time, like I said before, going to different basins, different operators, different experts to try to come up with the best plan to re-enter this well and then plug it as deemed by the state. So thank you very much for what you're doing. It is a top focus of our board. I know we've gone and talked to our board about the well, so it's from all the way from the top all the way to the bottom. It's focused on this well to try to repair that. So I know our team has gone on and looked at a lot of different data to try to give the most conservative view, and hopefully we'll be able to repair this, not have to go down this other path. But I appreciate everything you guys have looked at, and I appreciate all your time today. Thank you.
That will conclude the hearing for case number 29187. Moving on, case number 29188, application of Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation for an order amending the applicable orders for the Middle Creek and/or Foreman Butte Bakken pools, McKenzie County, North Dakota, to terminate 6 stand-up 1280-acre spacing units described as sections 2 and 11, sections 3 and 10, sections 4 and 9, sections 14 and 23, sections 15 and 22, and sections 16 and 21, Township 150 North, Range 103 West. Established 3 overlapping stand-up 19-20-acre spacing units consisting of sections 2, 11, and 14, sections 3, 10, and 15, and sections 4, 9, and 16, Township 150 North, Range 103 West, and authorize up to 5 horizontal wells to be drilled on each such unit, and for such other relief as may be appropriate. All interested parties, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation. I'll have 3 witnesses testifying, all telephonically in this case and the next case for Whiting, and it will be John Van Akron, Land, Charlie Harmon, again, Engineering, and Ryan Walter, Charlie Harmon on Geology, excuse me, and then Ryan Walter, Engineering. And I've got a different call-in number for them, so I'll get them on now.
All right.
There is one other participant in the meeting.
John, can you hear me?
I can.
And are Charlie and Ryan both there?
They are.
Okay.
All right. Mr. Van Akron, do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
John, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Sure. My name is John Van Akron. I'm employed by Whiting as a landman with the title of South Williston Basin and Non-Core Supervisor. Our address is 1700 Lincoln Street, Suite 4700, Denver, Colorado 80203.
And John, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
I have.
Okay, and you're familiar with the land matters relating to these 2 hearings?
I am.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Van Akron be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as that of an expert.
And John, let's go ahead and start with your L1, your locator map for the first case.
Sure. The locator map is of North Dakota with the 2 yellow stars denoting the general area of the proposed 1920 spacing unit. The map includes township and range and focuses on the Middle Creek
and Foreman Butte fields located in McKenzie County, North Dakota.
Okay. And let's move on to Exhibit L2.
Yeah, L2 is a land plat of the 3 proposed 1920 spacing units, which are outlined by the blue dashed line, with the most westerly proposed 1920 spacing unit comprising of sections 4, 9, and 16 of Township 150 North, Range 103 West, where Whiting holds a 96.87% working interest. If we move from west to east, the next proposed 1920 spacing unit is located in section 3, 10, and 15 of Township 150 North, Range 103 West, where Whiting holds an 85.42% working interest. The third proposed 1920 spacing unit is in section 2, 11, and 14 of Township 150 North, Range 103 West, where Whiting holds 100% working interest. The proposed future Bakken wells can be identified by the green dashed line, and the solid green and orange lines denote the producing Bakken and Three Fork wells, respectively. Whiting's leasehold footprint is shown in yellow.
And John, I guess just before we move on, just to clarify and confirm, the Middle Creek, that currently has 3 1280s, and we're seeking to terminate each of those and then create the 3 1920s, I guess, that would straddle Middle Creek and Foreman Butte, correct?
That is correct.
Okay. And then the next case has some additional 1920s that sort of tie together with this case, but those are all within Foreman Butte, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. All right, if you want to just go on and just finish up your land exhibit for us.
Yeah, exhibits L2, pages 2 through 4, show the working interest ownership breakdown for each of the proposed 1920 spacing units. You'll see at the top of the table the legal description of each proposed 1920 spacing unit, as well as the acreage allocation and percentage of the section and associated that are associated with the new proposed 1920 spacing unit.
Okay. And I don't have any further questions for Mr. Van Akkeren. I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we will move on to your next witness. Charlie Harmon, are you on the line?
I am.
All right, you've already been accepted as an expert, but we're still going to swear you in for each of these cases. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
All right, Charlie, let's go ahead and address the geology underlying these spacing units, beginning with your structure map, G1.
Yeah, G1 shows the Middle Creek and Foreman Butte field with the Upper Bakken Shale structure map with 20-foot contours. Up dip or shallower is to the west and deeper is to the east. And then I have existing well bores shown where Middle Bakken wells, which is the predominant producer in the area, are the green lateral. The 3 1920s we're proposing here are dashed in blue. And then in the black diamond, I have the location of our type log for the next exhibit.
Okay, and let's move on to G2, the type log.
Yeah, G2 is showing the type log for the area with the constituent zones of the Bakken Petroleum system. The left log track is showing gamma ray, the center log track is deep resistivity, and the right log track is neutron porosity and bulk density. And then we've got the formations of interest labeled on the right, the lodgepole, Upper Bakken Shale, Middle Bakken, Lower Bakken Shale, and first benches of Three Fork. In general, Whiting's intention in the area is to land and target wells in the Middle Bakken. And due to the thin nature of the petroleum system in the area, we believe Middle Bakken well bores drain both the Bakken and the first benches of Three Forks in the area.
Sure. I have no further questions for Mr. Harmon, and I'd offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Any questions from commission staff?
Charlie, the diagonal wells that you have depicted on Exhibit G1, those are Madison targeted diagonal wells, correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none, we will move on to Mr. Walter. Are you online?
Yes, good morning.
Good morning. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Ryan, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Sure. My name is Ryan Walter. I'm employed by Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation as an operations engineer, and our address is 1700 Lincoln Street, Suite 4700, Denver, Colorado 80203.
And Ryan, have you previously testified before this commission?
I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
I have.
Okay, I'd move the testimony, Mr. Walter, be received as that of an expert in this case.
It will be received as that of an expert.
Okay. And Ryan, let's start with E1. Just can you take us through how you would intend to develop these proposed spacing units?
Sure. Exhibit E1 is a map depicting the location where the requested overlapping 1920 acre spacing units exist. They consist of sections 2, 11, and 14, 3, 10, and 15, and sections 4, 9, and 16, all of Township 150 North, Range 103 West, McKenzie County, North Dakota. The proposed infill wells are shown as green dashed line.
Okay. Let's move on to the reservoir data and economics, E2.
Sure. Exhibit E2 is an engineering exhibit that outlines the reservoir characteristics of the Bakken in this area. Included are the volumetric reserve calculations and economic forecast for the development of the proposed 1920s. We estimate that OOIP is approximately 17.6 million barrels per 1920 for the Bakken and Three Forks, and the wells in the proposed 1920 are expected to recover approximately 604,000 stock tank barrels each. For wellbore construction, Whiting intends to set 9 5/8 surface casing and 7-inch production casing. Whiting will complete the wells with multi-stage hydraulic fracture stimulations. Assuming an oil price of $60 a barrel and a gas price of $3.50 per MCF, a D&C cost of $8 million, this well is expected to pay out in 2 years.
Okay. And Ryan, in your opinion, would the respacing to the 1920s with this proposed development, would that protect relative rights, prevent waste, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, it would.
I have no further questions for Mr. Walter, and I'd offer the engineering exhibits as well as the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and the affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none?
Well, I do have some. I thought Mark was going to ask some here. As far as drilling the wells, Ryan, are you going to batch drill these or drill and evaluate? Common pad? What's your plans?
We currently have 3 pads on our schedule in Q4 of this year, so we'd be pad drilling.
Okay, and the 3 pads that you're planning, would that be to drill multiple wells north and south from them, so you would develop the 1920s in the next case also?
These initial 3 do not include the ones to the south, but the second wave, when we would come in potentially next year, would include those southern row of wells.
Okay, and where would your surface locations be? Would they be located on the south end of your proposed 1920s?
We have a mixture of those, depending on whether we're on fee or fed land, but we have both a northern and a southern corridor, I guess, to answer your question.
Okay, why don't you just identify it on like Exhibit E1, just give me an approximate location of where your surface pads would be.
Yeah, okay, so on the easternmost DSU, we are planning a pad in the south of Section 35, 151 North, 103 West. And the middle DSU, the as shown there, we are planning a pad in the south of 15 in 150 north, 103 west. And then on the westernmost pad, 4, 9, and 16, we are planning a pad in the south end of 33, 151 north, 103 west.
Good, thank you.
Ryan, there are lease line 2560s in this area. Looks like between every one of the spacing units in this case, 3, 4, 9, and 10, 2, 3, 10, 11, and 1, 2, 11, and 12. I guess that's the next case, but should those be terminated at this point?
Yes, they should.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, is there anything further, Mr. Mann?
Not in this case. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
That will conclude the hearing for case number 29188. Moving on, case number 29189, application of Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation for an order amending the applicable orders for the Foreman Butte Bakken Pool, McKenzie County, North Dakota, to terminate 4 stand-up 1280-acre spacing units described as sections 13 and 24, sections 26 and 35, sections 27 and 34, and sections 28 and 33, Township 150 North, Range 103 West. Establish 3 overlapping stand-up to 1920-acre spacing units consisting of sections 21, 28, and 33, sections 22, 27, and 34, and sections 23, 26, and 35, Township 150 North, Range 103 West, and authorize up to 5 horizontal wells to be drilled on each such unit. Establish an overlapping stand-up 1920-acre spacing unit consisting of sections 1, 12, and 13, Township 150 North, Range 103 West, and authorize up to 4 horizontal wells to be drilled on the unit. Establish an overlapping stand-up 1920-acre spacing unit consisting of sections 24, 25, and 36, Township 150 North, Range 103 West, and authorize up to 3 horizontal wells to be drilled on the unit, and for such other relief as may be appropriate. All interested parties, please come forward.
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Whiting Oil and Gas Corporation. Mr. Examiner, all the same 3 witnesses testify in this case, which is, as was alluded to, it's sort of a companion case to the previous case, except for all of the lands are within Foreman Butte entirely.
Okay. And all of their testimony has already been accepted as that of experts, but I will still swear them each in separately. So, Mr. Van Akron, are you still on the phone?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
John, can you go ahead and take us through the land exhibits, starting with the locator map?
Sure. Locator map is of North Dakota with the yellow star denoting the general location of the proposed 1920 spacing unit in Foreman Butte field located in McKenzie County, North Dakota.
And let's move on to, L2.
Sure. Exhibit L2, page 1 of the land plat with the 5 proposed 1920 spacing units outlined by the blue dash line. Whiting holds 100% working interest in 4 of the 5 proposed 1920 spacing units, consisting of sections 1, 12, and 13, sections 22, 27, and 34, sections 23, 26, and 35, and sections 24, 25, and 36 of Township 150 North, Range 103 West. In section 21, 28, and 33 of Township 150 North, Range 103 West, Whiting holds a 70.39% working interest. The proposed future Bakken wells can be identified by the green dash line, and the solid green and orange lines denote the producing Bakken and Three Forks wells, respectively. Whiting's leasehold footprint is shown in yellow.
And to the extent, if you need to kind of touch on anything in the additional pages, go ahead.
Sure. Similar to the last one, the Exhibit L2, pages 2 through 6, show the working interest ownership breakdown of each of the 5 proposed 1920 spacing units.
I have no further questions for Mr. Van Akkeren in this case, and I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to you, Mr. Harmon. Are you still on the line?
I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Charlie, these spacing units are immediately adjacent to and to the south and east, so I don't know, to the extent there's anything different on the geology structure map or type log, can you kind of address that for us?
Yeah, the displays are appreciably similar. I'd say the major difference with this case versus the previous is that we have two DSUs with existing Middle Bakken wells in them. That would be section 1, 12, and 13, and 24, 25, and 36. And consequently, we're requesting a lower density of new wells to compensate for those existing Middle Bakken wells.
Sure. I have no further questions for Mr. Harmon. I'd offer the geology exhibits in this case.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we will move on to you, Mr. Walter. You still on the line?
Yes,
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
All right, Ryan, let's look at E1, and if you can walk us through how you would intend to develop each of these proposed 1920s.
Yeah, Exhibit E1 is a map depicting the location where the requested overlapping 1920 acre spacing units exist. They consist of sections 1, 12, and 13, 21, 28, and 33, 22, 27, 34, 23, 26, and 35, and lastly 24, 25, and 36, all of 150 North, 103 West, McKenzie County, North Dakota. The proposed infill wells are shown as green dashed lines.
Okay. Let's move on then to E2, if you can take us through the reservoir data and economics.
Sure. Exhibit E2 is an engineering exhibit that outlines the reservoir characteristics of the Bakken in this area. Included are the volumetric reserve calculations and the economic forecast for the development of the proposed 1920s. Again, we estimate that the OIP is approximately 17.6 million barrels per 1920 for the Bakken and Three Forks in this area. The wells in the proposed 1920s are expected to recover approximately 604,000 barrels each. For wellbore construction, Whiting intends to set 9 5/8 surface casing and 7-inch production casing. Whiting will complete the wells with multi-stage hydraulic fracture stimulation. Assuming an oil price of $60 a barrel, a gas price of $3.50 per MCF, and a D&C cost of $8 million, these wells are expected to pay out in 2 years. And then as far as surface location goes, we intend to put pads along that northern row of wells shown in the blue dashed line. And for the northern DSU there, the pad would be in section 36 of 151, 103 West.
So, Ryan, again, in this case, in your opinion, would the respacing to the 1920s for this development, is that going to protect relative rights, prevent waste, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, it would.
And I have no further questions that offer the engineering exhibits and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Ryan, Charlie indicated that there was a decrease in the density of wells on the two spacing units to the east because of the existing well bores in two of the spacing units that were going to get vacated. Looking at the proposal for that southeast 1920, where you're only proposing 3 wells, do you feel you'll have full drainage on the northernmost section in that spacing unit? Is that section 24, I believe?
Yeah, what we do is we would alter our fracture stimulation in that area to ensure that we drain that entire DSU.
Okay. Looks like you're planning to do some gymnastics with the well, as with the proposed well paths as well.
That's true.
Have you considered the possibility of leaving a 1280 well on 13 and 24 to kind of fill up the pattern on the east side of those spacing units, so you don't have to, so you basically get the additional well bore to help with drainage?
Yeah, we did consider coming off of the pad that's in the north of 25 there and going north with the 1280 to essentially butt up against that northern well. That's the Prairie USA, I believe. So that is something that we had tossed around as well.
Is there a reason you chose not to pursue that, or can you give us some additional information around that?
It's mostly based on capital efficiency. You know, the single well economics are not as desirable.
Okay. And when you drill that easternmost 1920, where'd you indicate the surface location was going to be on that well?
Are you talking about the northern DSU?
No, the southeasternmost DSU, the surface location for that.
Yeah, so that particular pad will be in the north end of that DSU. That's section 24, I believe. It'd be in the north central part of section 24, 150, 103.
Okay. Stimulation wise, I guess I'm asking for a generalization here, I guess, but with the portions of the wellbore that are closer to the pad, do you have more flexibility with your stimulation? Do you think you have a more effective stimulation the closer you are to your pad?
Generally speaking, yes.
And your plan is to adjust the stimulation in that portion of those laterals in 24 to I guess, more effectively stimulate that section?
Yes, correct.
Could you provide a supplemental along those lines, how you would adjust the stimulation in that portion to, I guess, get proper drainage out of that section?
Yeah, we can do that.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, in this case, there are also lease line 2560s consisting of 27, 28, 33, and 34, 26, 27, 34, and 35, 25, 26, 35, and 36. And you would like those terminated?
Yes, we would.
What about on the east side, say 1 and 12, 6 and 7, 13, 24, 18, 19, 25, 36, 30, and 31? What about those?
Yes, those could also be terminated. I had mentioned in the previous case that we're planning 3 DSUs in Q4 of this year. We've got stand-up 3 mile in 7, 18, and 19 planned this year, and then the 3 mile DSU to the north of that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Ryan, when you drill these wells, will you batch drill all wells at one time, or are you going to drill 1 or 2 and then evaluate?
Yeah, we prefer to batch drill them all at once.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none, there was a request to supplement the record. I guess, what kind of time period do you think you need for that?
Yeah, Ryan, how long do you think it'll take to put together that information that Mr. Suggs wanted on the completion?
Yeah, we should be able to get that by the end of the week.
Okay.
So that would be this Friday would be the 18th? Is that,
Yeah.
Yep.
Friday the 18th, that'll work, Ryan?
That works for us.
Okay.
the record will remain open until Friday, the February 18th. Anything further, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner, thank you.
That will conclude the hearing for case number 29189. The time is 10:35. Why don't we go ahead and take a 5-minute break? Meet back here at 10:40. right, and we are back on the record. We will be moving on to case number 29190. Application of Oasis Petroleum North America LLC for an order amending the applicable orders for the Cottonwood Bakken Pool to establish a laydown 1920-acre spacing unit described as sections 16, 17, and 18, Township 157 North, Range 92 West, Montreal County, North Dakota, and authorize 6 horizontal wells to be drilled on such unit and granting such other relief as may be appropriate. Would all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Oasis Petroleum North America, LLC. Mr. Examiner, I have 3 witnesses appearing telephonically in this case, as well as in case 29191 and 29192, which, kind of like the last couple, are pretty similar, same area, adjacent, proposed spacing units. So, but the witnesses for each of these cases are Nicole Meredith, Nathan Gableman, and Cole Carruthers.
All right. And so your first witness was Nicole Meredith?
Correct.
Ms. Meredith, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
That's correct.
Nicole, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, and what capacity, and give us your business address?
Yes, Nicole Meredith, employed with Oasis Petroleum North America as a senior staff landman. Business address is 1001 Fannin, Suite 1500, 77002.
And Nicole, have you previously
Houston, Texas.
Okay. Have you previously testified before the commission?
Yes, I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes, I have.
Okay, and you're familiar with the land matters relating to these 3 cases?
That's correct.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Ms. Meredith be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as that of an expert.
Okay, and Nicole, let's start with L1, if you can identify the proposed spacing unit for us.
Sure. This is the land exhibit that portrays the proposed 1920-acre spacing, denoted with the hatched red unit located in 157, Range 92, Sections 16, 17, and 18.
Okay, and let's move on to L2.
Sure. This L2 depicts the working interest for the proposed 1920-acre spacing unit. So Oasis holds a 53.59% working interest in the proposed 1920-acre spacing unit in 157, 92, 16, 17, and 18.
Okay, and then let's move on to the working interest breakdown for the sections that compose the 1920.
All right. Yeah, this is the existing spacing unit summary. So we've got 3 underlying spaced units, 2 640-acre spaced units, and 1 1280, along with the corresponding working interest in said units. Unit A, Oasis currently owns 81% working interest. Unit B, we hold 80%. And lastly, Oasis does not own an interest currently in the undeveloped unit depicted as Unit C.
I have no further questions for Ms. Meredith that offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we will move on. And can't read my own writing here. Was it Mr. Gableman?
Yeah, Nathan Gableman.
Mr. Gableman, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
Yes. Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Nathan, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Yes, my name is Nathan Gielman. I'm employed by Oasis Petroleum as a senior geologist, located at 1001 Fannin, Suite 1500, in Houston, Texas, zip code 77002.
And Nathan, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes,
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
yes, I have.
Okay, and you're familiar with the geology underlying the lands in each of these three cases?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Gableman be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as that of an expert.
All right, and Nathan, let's start with G1, if you can take us through that structure map.
Yes, Exhibit G1 illustrates the Upper Bakken Shale structure map on a 20-foot contour interval, showing a gradual dip to the down dip to the southwest. I've also highlighted the proposed spacing unit in blue. I've also highlighted the type log for the area, the Erie 44-19H with the yellow dot.
Okay, let's move on to G2.
Yes, G2 illustrates the Middle Bakken isopac map on a 2-foot contour interval, gradually thinning to the north-northeast, also displaying the proposed unit in blue there.
Okay, and then let's move on to the type log, G3.
Yes, G3 illustrates the Erie 44-19 type log just south of the unit there, with the gamma ray on the far left, the resistivity in the middle, and the porosity logs on the right, also illustrating each of the formation tops and highlighting the Middle Bakken in yellow as the primary target for this unit.
Okay, I have no further questions that offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Nathan, the diagonal well in section 18 and the horizontal well that penetrates section 17, are they both Middle Bakken target?
Those two wells are actually Three Forks.
Okay. And the intent with the new wells, you intend to target everything in the Middle Bakken, or do you intend to have potential Three Forks?
At this point, it's just a Middle Bakken target.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Any further questions from staff? Then we'll move on to Mr. Crothers. Are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Cole, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
My name is Cole Carruthers. I'm employed by Oasis Petroleum as a development engineer at 1001 Fannin, Suite 1500. That's Houston, Texas 77002.
And Cole, have you previously testified before the commission?
I have not previously testified
Okay.
before the commission.
Sure. And I guess, Cole, before we get into your educational background, work experience, since you haven't testified, can you just spell your last name for the record for us?
It's spelled Carruters.
Thank you. And Cole, why don't you briefly walk us through your educational background and work experience with respect to petroleum engineering?
Okay. I have a petroleum engineering degree from Texas A&M University. Since graduating in 2014, I've worked at Oasis Petroleum in a number of different roles. I've worked as a production engineer, facilities engineer. I've worked as a reservoir engineer in corporate planning, and now I'm currently working as a development engineer. And I've worked at Oasis for almost 8 years now.
Okay. And Cole, you're responsible for development of these proposed 1,920-acre spacing units we're talking about today?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and you've put together some exhibits relating to those spacing units?
Yes, I have.
Okay. Mr. Examiner, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Carruthers be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as expert testimony.
All right. And Cole, let's start with E1, I guess, just if you could give us kind of an overview of the three proposed spacing units in each of the cases, and then we'll kind of move on and discuss the one particular to this case.
Okay. Yeah. So in Exhibit E1, you can see our plan for development on these with these three 1920s that we're trying to space. On the top in orangish you can see case number 29190, where we'll be spacing out that 3 mile. We're planning on 6 Bakken wells, like we've already discussed.
Okay.
And then the other 2 spacing units going south are the next 2 cases.
Sure. Let's move on to E2 then. With respect to the laydown 1920, can you take us through how you intend to develop that spacing unit?
Okay, here in this exhibit, you can see our planned wellbores. We're planning 6 wellbores, all evenly spaced in the Bakken. We do not plan on any section lines here, and we're planning on either drilling them from the east or west. Right now, we're favoring that east side just due to the existing infrastructure.
Okay. Let's move on then to E3, if you can take us through the reservoir data and economics.
Okay. In E3, you can see we have breakdown in these tables. Our reservoir properties be in the first table. That's there for everyone to see. In the second table, you can see our estimated original oil in place and our recovery factor, or estimated recovery. We're spacing at 1920. Our original oil in place, we're estimating at 19.4 million stock tank barrels. The formation will all be middle Bakken. Our estimated EUR for each of these wells is 795,000 barrels of oil. We'll be drilling 6 wells, and that brings our recovery factor to 25%. On our well economics, we're running at $55 a barrel and a gas price of $2.50 per MCF. We'll be drilling 3-mile lateral. Our capital investment is going to come in at just under $9.2 million, and our undiscounted return on investment will be right at two times.
Okay. So, Cole, in your opinion, would the creation of the 1920 to allow for the development that you've described, is that going to protect relative rights, prevent waste, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, I believe it will.
Okay. I have no further questions. I'd offer the engineering exhibits and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Cole, do you plan to drill these wells from a single pad?
I don't know if we've gotten that far. Right now, we're looking at probably drilling them from that southern pad, just to the east, from a southern pad, and then potentially a northern pad as well. But right now, I wouldn't say we have a definitive plan on 1 or 2 pads.
Okay, thank
But
you.
it won't be more than 2.
Okay, thank you.
Cole, this is Bruce Hicks. Do you plan to drill all wells, or will you just drill 1 pad with 3 wells on it and then evaluate?
Our plan would be to develop them all at the same time.
Okay, and then how about the existing wells? Do you plan to continue to produce them?
As of right now, yes. The final decision on that would be on if they get stimulated and how they look after the infill fracs.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions from commission staff? Mr. Mann, is there anything further in this case?
Not in this case. Thank you, Mr. Examiner.
And that will conclude the hearing for case number 29190. Moving on, we'll go on to case number 29191, application of Oasis Petroleum North America LLC for an order amending the applicable orders for the Cottonwood Bakken Pool to establish a stand-up 1920-acre spacing unit described as sections 19, 30, and 31, Township 157 North, Range 92 West, Montreal County, North Dakota, and authorize 6 horizontal wells to be drilled on such unit and granting such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Oasis Petroleum North America LLC. And Mr. Examiner, I have the same 3 witnesses testifying in this case.
Okay, and their Testimony has already been received as that of an expert in case number 29190. We will continue with that, but we will swear them in separately. Ms. Meredith, are you still on the phone?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Nicole, why don't you take us through the land exhibits, beginning with L1, if you could identify the 1920 for us?
Sure. This land exhibit portrays the 1920 acre space denoted with the hatched red unit line located in Township 157, Range 92, Sections 19, 30, and 31.
Okay, and let's move on to L2.
L2 outlines the working interest for the proposed 1920 acre spacing unit. Oasis holds a 90.23% working interest in Township 157, 92, Sections 19, 30, and 31.
Okay, and L3?
Yeah, L3 identifies the three underlying spaced units, 1,640 acres.
Okay, I have no further questions. I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Gableman, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Nathan, let's go through your geology exhibits. I don't know if you've got anything different from the last case, but if so, if you can just highlight anything, any distinctions or anything else you'd like to highlight.
Yes, like in the previous case, there's nothing too materially different. You have the updated spacing unit showing section 19, 30, and 31 on the first slide for the structure map, but then we will be crossing the two Bakken wells in this unit versus the two Three Forks wells in the previous unit.
Sure. And same type log, correct?
Same type log, yeah.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Gableman, and I'd offer the geology exhibits again in this case.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Carruthers? Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
All right, Cole. Exhibit E1, I think we've already kind of addressed that. So let's move on to E2, if you can take us through the proposed development plan for this particular 1920.
Okay, in Exhibit E2, we are looking at 6 north-south Bakken wells as well. We do have an existing Bakken well in the unit, so we would have to navigate around that. But other than that, it's very similar to the previous case with 6 infill wells all in the Bakken.
Okay. Then with respect to reservoir data and economics, I don't know if there's any changes from the previous. If so, if you want to just highlight those and summarize the information on E3.
Yes, so we do not believe there's any material differences in reservoir properties here. So these are similar EURs and similar investment and similar return.
Okay. And then, Cole, once again, if we create this 1920 for the development you've described, is that going to protect relative rights, prevent waste, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, we believe so.
Okay. And I have no further questions. In this case, I would offer the engineering exhibits and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Cole, it appears that both of your wells, the one in 19 and the one in 30 and 31, are Middle Bakken, and you mentioned navigating around them. Do you plan on continuing to produce both of them?
Yes, as of now, same situation. We plan to continue to produce both of them.
And would you have any standoff for your stages where they are crossed by the new wells?
So more than likely, yes, that would be the case. We would probably base out our stages off of where they cross.
Thank you.
Cole, in this unit, where do you plan on locating your surface location or locations?
Right now, we're favoring the south side due to the also existing infrastructure. We haven't decided completely on that, but the south side is looking more promising.
And would it likely be from two pads then?
Yes, we're looking at a similar design, 1 to 2 pads.
Thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none, is there anything further, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner.
That will conclude the hearing for case number 29191. Moving on, case number 29192, application of Oasis Petroleum North America LLC for an order amending the applicable orders for the Cottonwood Bakken Pool to establish a stand-up 1920-acre spacing unit described as sections 20, 29, and 32, Township 157 North, Range 92 West, Montreal County, North Dakota, and authorize 6 horizontal wells to be drilled on such unit, and granting such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Oasis Petroleum North America, LLC. And once again, I have the same 3 witnesses testifying in this case.
And those witnesses have all been admitted as experts in case number 29190, but we will swear them in separately. Ms. Meredith, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
All right, Nicole, let's go through the land exhibits. L1, if you can identify the 1920 we're talking about in this case.
Yes, L1 is the regional land locator map that portrays the proposed 1920-acre unit as shown on the map via the hatched red dashed line located in 157 Township, Range 92, Section 20, 29, and 32.
Okay. And then let's move on to L2 and Oasis working interest.
Yes, L2 identifies the working interest for Oasis in the proposed 1920-acre spacing unit. Oasis has a 88.18% working interest in 157, 92, 20, 29, and 32.
Okay. And then L3, if you can take us through that working interest breakdown.
Sure. This walks us through the 2 underlying spaced units depicted on the map as Unit A and Unit B. Unit A being 17 and 20, Oasis owns an 80.45% working interest, and Unit B being sections 29 and 32, Oasis owns a 92.04% working interest.
Okay, I have no further questions. I'd offer the land exhibits.
Exhibits are admitted. Any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Gableman. Are you still on the line?
Yep, I'm still here.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
All right, and again, Nathan, why don't you just take us through geology exhibits with relation to this particular spacing unit?
Yes, like the other exhibits, there's nothing too materially different. These exhibits, the first exhibit showing the structure map with just the updated 1920 cross section 20, 29, and 32 there. Also identifying the same type log in that Erie 44-19H.
Okay. And I don't have any further questions for Mr. Gableman on this case, and I'd offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, Mr. Crothers, you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
And Cole, with this case, if you want to, I don't think we need to touch on E1 again, but E2, look at the particular 1920 at issue here and describe how you'd intend to develop this proposed spacing unit.
Okay. On E2, we're looking at 6 infill Bakkens as well. On this one, we'll not be having to go over or under any existing well bores, so it'll be just six new wells based off the existing wells, all in the Bakken.
Okay. And then moving on to E3, if there's any distinctions or anything else you'd like to highlight with respect to reservoir data or economics on this 1920, go ahead.
Yes, so again, the reservoir and economics are identical to the previous 2 cases.
Okay. And then once again, with respect to this particular 1920 that we're talking about, if that's approved and you develop it as you've described, is that going to protect relative rights, prevent waste, and prevent the drilling of unnecessary wells?
Yes, it will.
Okay, and I have no further questions that offer the engineering exhibits and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Cole, in this case, where do you plan on locating your surface locations?
These would probably be the same the previous case, where we're going to come from the south, more than likely.
Thank you.
Any further questions from staff? Seeing none, anything further in this case, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner, thank you.
That will conclude the hearing for case number 29192. The applicable orders for the Stanley and/or Ross Bakken pools to establish an overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit described at sections 33 and 34, Township 156 North, Range 91 West, and sections 3 and 4, Township 155 North, Range 91 West, Montreal County, North Dakota, and authorize one horizontal well to be drilled on such unit and for such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Hess Bakken Investments 2 LLC. I have 3 witnesses appearing in this case as well as the next case, and it will be Jordan Payne, Lee Bartholomew, and Aisha Keshemir, and I'll call them now. Wade Mann. Jordan, can you hear me? Hello? All right. Are Lee and Aisha there as well? All right. We're ready to go.
Okay.
Okay, and Jordan Payne, are you on the line? Can you hear me?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
Jordan, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
My name is Jordan Payne. I'm employed by Hess Corporation as a senior landman. My work address is 1501 McKinney Street, Houston, Texas, 77010.
And Jordan, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes.
I'd move the testimony of Mr. Payne be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as that of an expert.
All right. And Jordan, let's start with exhibit number 1. If you can identify for us the proposed spacing unit.
Yes, so exhibit 1 is a location map showing the proposed 2560 DSU outlined in green, and the existing would be overlapped 1280 DSUs outlined in blue.
Okay. And let's move on to E2, if you can take us through the working interest for that proposed spacing unit.
Yes, exhibit 2 shows the ownership breakdown for the applicable units in the Hess operated DSU in sections 27 and 34, which is referred to as the RS Agribank, Hess owns an approximate 42% working interest. In the section 4 and 33, RS Harstad DSU, Hess owns an approximate 37% working interest. And in the section 3 and 10, DSU operated by Castle Peak, Hess does not own working interest. Castle Peak owns an approximate 84%. So in the big box at the bottom, you'll see the working interest for the proposed DSU, where Hess owns an approximate 29% working interest. Castle Peak owns an approximate 36% working interest. And we have been in contact with Castle Peak about this case, and they have offered a letter of support for Hess as operator, and that is included in the exhibit.
And that letter is exhibit 3, is that correct, Jordan?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. I have no further questions for Mr. Payne. I'd offer exhibits 1 through 3.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to Mr. Bartholomew. Are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
Lee, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, and what capacity, and give us your business address?
Lee Bartholomew, advisor to the Operations Geology Group with Hess Corporation. Address is 1501 McKinney Street, Houston, Texas 77010.
And Lee, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes, I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes.
Okay, I'd move the testimony of Mr. Bartholomew be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as that of an expert.
And Lee, let's, starting with exhibit number E4, can you take us through the geology underlying the proposed spacing unit?
So this is the, on exhibit 4, I've got a top of the middle Bakken structure map with a contour interval of 50 feet. Showing our proposed 2560 DSU outline in green, overlying the structure map, which is dipping to the west. So that formation is present throughout the area. And the line 8A prime, which is referencing the cross section.
All right, let's move on to the cross-section then, exhibit 5.
Exhibit 5 is a stratigraphic cross-section along the line 8A prime with 2 wells showing that the targeted formation, middle Bakken, is present and continuous across the region.
Okay, I have no further questions for Mr. Bartholomew in this case, and I'd offer the geology exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on to Ms. Keshemir. Are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
Aisha, can I have you state your name, by whom you're employed, in what capacity, and give us your business address?
Sure. My name is Aisha Kashmir, employed by Hess Corporation as a reservoir engineer, located in 1501 McKinney Street, Houston, Texas 77010.
And Aisha, have you previously testified before this commission?
Yes, I have.
And have you had your qualifications received as that of an expert?
Yes.
Okay, I'd move that the testimony of Ms. Kashmir be received as that of an expert in these cases.
It will be received as that of an expert.
And Aisha, let's go through Exhibit 6. Can you describe how you intend to develop the proposed spacing unit?
Sure. Exhibit 6 shows the proposed 2560 development for Section 3 and 4 and Section 3334. The bold dashed line, the green bold dashed line, is the proposed well, and it's going to be drilled from the same pad as the infill well, and it's going to be in the Middle Bakken Formation.
Okay. Let's move on to Exhibit 7 then. Can you walk us through the reservoir data and economics?
Sure. Exhibit 7 shows the reservoir and economic summary for a single Middle Bakken well in the Red Sky area. The expected EUR is around 500,000 barrels, standard barrels, with 1.1% recovery factor. Economics were run at 57 WTI flat with and 100% working interest. The expected MPV is around 2.1 million with 23% rate of return.
And Aisha, in your opinion, would the creation of the 2560 for this lease line well, would that prevent waste and protect relative rights?
Yes, it does.
I have no further questions. I would offer Exhibit 6, 7, and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Aisha, your lease line well, is that going to be drilled on the section line?
It's going to be approximately 100 feet from the lease line.
In the lease line area between sections 9 and 10, does Hess have any plans for developing that area?
Section 9. For now, no plans.
Do you know how far that easternmost well in section 9 is off the section line?
It's around 800 feet.
So you think that well will drain that lease line area between 9 and 10?
Nine and 10, no. The well will be draining from the section 4 and 3.
I understand that, but the existing well in section 9, the easternmost well,
Oh, for the lease line. Okay, gotcha. It's an outside operator well, so I'm not sure what will the completion for this well actually, if it is going to be drained. But section 9 and 10, there is no plan for now. We did consider to do a 3-mile lateral actually for the Harstead lease line, but unfortunately we can't due to the pad location, because if we change the pad to a northern part, that it would be within the city limit of Stanley, and the topography is not favorable for to find a location for the pad. In addition for that, it's going to be, and in addition to that, it's being in close approximation or to the airport.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Is there anything further on this matter, Mr. Mann?
No, Mr. Examiner. Thank you.
Well, that will conclude the hearing for case number 29144. Moving on, case number 29145. Application of Hess Bakken Investments 2 LLC for an order amending the applicable orders for the Beaver Lodge Bakken Pool to establish an overlapping 2560 acre spacing unit described as sections 5, 6, 7, and 8, Township 155 North, Range 95 West, Williams County, North Dakota, and authorize one horizontal well to be drilled on such unit, and for such other relief as may be appropriate. Will all interested parties please come forward?
Thank you, Mr. Examiner. Wade Mann, P.O. Box 2798, Bismarck, North Dakota, appearing in this case on behalf of Hess Bakken Investments 2 LLC. And Mr. Examiner, I'll have the same three witnesses testify in this case.
And your three witnesses were already admitted as experts in case number 29144, but we will swear them in separately. Mr. Payne, are you online?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
I do.
And Jordan, again, with respect to this case, exhibit number 1, can you identify the proposed spacing unit?
Yes, exhibit number 1 shows the proposed 2560 spacing unit outlined in green and the overlapped 1280 existing spacing unit outlined in blue.
Okay. And then moving on to exhibit 2, can you take us through the working interest in that proposed spacing unit?
Yes, exhibit 2 shows the working interest breakdown in the BLS Ramberg 1280 DSU in section 6 and 1. Hess owns 100% working interest. In the BL Ramberg in section 5 and 4, Hess owns an approximate 76% working interest. And in the BL Iverson B in section 7 and 8, Hess owns an approximate 88% working interest. So combined for the proposed overlapping 2560 spacing unit, Hess would own an approximate 88% working interest.
Okay, I have no further questions. I'd offer the land exhibits.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Seeing none, we'll move on. Mr. Bartholomew, are you on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes.
All right, Lee, let's go through the geology for this spacing unit, beginning with the structure map, E3.
So Exhibit 3 is a structure map of the Middle Bakken with contour interval of 50 feet, showing the location of the requested 2560 on the east flank of the Nesson Anticline, which is dipping down to the east. And the line 88 prime is referencing the stratigraphic cross-section in Exhibit 4.
All right, let's go ahead and move on to Exhibit 4, and if you can take us through that cross-section.
So Exhibit 4 shows is referencing the cross-section of the well found on the line 88 prime in Exhibit 3, showing that the targeted formations are present and continuous across the area.
Okay, I have no further questions, and I'd offer Exhibits 3 and 4.
The exhibits are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff? Okay. Seeing none. Ms. Ketchmer, are you still on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm under the penalties of perjury that the testimony you're about to give in this matter will be true and correct to the best of your knowledge and belief?
Yes, I do.
All right, Aisha, with respect to this proposed spacing unit, can you take us through your proposed development plan, Exhibit 5, excuse me?
Sure. Exhibit 5 shows the proposed 2560 development plan for Section 5, Section 6, and Section 7 and 8. The bold dashed line is the proposed well, and it will be drilled in the Middle Bakken Formation from the same pad as the infill well.
Okay. And then let's move on to Exhibit 6. Can you take us through the reservoir data and economics?
Sure. Exhibit 6 shows the reservoir data and economic summary for a single Middle Bakken well in Beaver Lodge area. The expected EUR is around 580 with 1.8% recovery factor. The economics were run at $57 per barrel WTI flat and 100% working interest. The expected MPV is around $13 million with 90% rate of return.
And Aisha, again, in your opinion on this proposed 2560, if it's approved and you can drill that lease line well, is that going to prevent waste and protect wildlife rights?
Correct, yes.
Okay. I have no further questions. I'd offer Exhibits 5, 6, and the gas capture plan affidavit.
The exhibits and affidavit are admitted. Are there any questions from commission staff?
Aisha, how far off the section line is this well planned?
It's 200 feet from the north lease line.
And it looks like on your Exhibit 5, there's a lease line well in 1 and 12, 6, and 7.
Yes, there is one. It's the BLS Brumberg H1.
And it looks like that well's in the Middle Bakken also.
Yes, that's correct.
So your intent is to produce both these that would appear to be a little closer than you would like, or normally would drill wells on an infill development?
They are approximately 450 feet from each other, and the plan is to manage the spacing from wells when we do the completion. So we will be monitoring the water. We will be fracking and pumping based on the spacing between existing wells
Okay, thank you.
to avoid depletion. Mm-hmm.
Are there any further questions from commission staff? Seeing none. Mr. Mann, anything further?
No, Mr. Examiner, thank you.
All right. And that will conclude the hearing for case number 29145. Moving on. Case number 29119. Application of Foundation Energy Management, LLC, for an order amending the applicable orders for the bicentennial Bakken Pool to authorize the recompletion and production of one vertical well in a 160-acre spacing unit consisting of the southeast quarter of Section 28, Township 144 North, Range 103 West, Golden Valley County, North Dakota, and for other other relief as may be appropriate. This case is continued till March. Case number 29120. Application of Foundation Energy Management, LLC, for an order amending the applicable orders for the Beaver Creek Bakken Pool to authorize the recompletion and production of one existing vertical well in a 160-acre spacing unit consisting of the southeast quarter of Section 1, Township 142 North, Range 103 West, Golden Valley County, North Dakota, and for such other relief as may be appropriate. This case is continued till March. Case number 29121. Application of Foundation Energy Management, LLC, for an order amending the applicable orders for the Beaver Creek Bakken Pool to authorize the recompletion and production of one existing vertical well in a 160-acre spacing unit consisting of the northwest quarter of Section 6, Township 142 North, Range 102 West, Billings County, North Dakota, and for such other relief as may be appropriate. This case is continued till March. And that will conclude the hearing docket for Wednesday, February 16th, 2022.